Spawn is one of the most iconic heroes in the Image Comics universe, born out of vengeance and wildfire. At the same time, he is also a magnet for some of the most powerful, twisted, and otherworldly antagonists, from fallen angels to corrupted mortals. Some of these enemies challenge Spawn physically, whereas others challenge Spawn psychologically and spiritually. Today, we'll discuss Spawn's most powerful enemies and reflect on their origin, powers, and interactions with Spawn. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Satan. When recounting the most powerful enemies of Spawn, Satan stands as one of the most formidable adversaries, depicted as the true ruler of hell. According to Image Comics, Satan is an almost omnipotent cosmic being with authority over other infernal beings, including Malbula. According to Image Comics, Satan is the twin sibling of God, both from the mother of existence, and upon their birth, each of them was granted power to dominate Earth. However, their conflicting ideologies of seeking order and free will became so destructive that ultimately the mother of existence had to banish them into divine slumber, from which they woke up after humans came into existence. Satan's power overshadows every other villain in the Spawn universe. With near omnipotent powers, Satan can manipulate reality and time, and even manipulate souls. He's also immortal with unfathomable raw strength and energy protection. Due to these immense powers, the lesser demon lords of hell answer to Satan's will. When Spawn crosses hell to rescue Wanda and his child, he encounters Satan in a battle. Even though Spawn proves to be no match for the power of Satan, he does manage to prevent a universal cataclysm by preventing a collision between God and Satan. Satan is not merely a demon of hell, unlike Malbula or Mammon, but rather he is hell with divine level powers. Within the Spawn universe, no other villain comes close to this corrupted divine, whose defeat carries serious repercussions for heaven and hell alike. Urien. Even before the divine god or Satan came into existence, there existed a menacing villain in the Spawn universe who predated heaven, hell, and even time. And that formidable foe was Urien. Urien is one of the most terrifying and primordial enemies of Spawn, first appearing in issue 93 of Spawn, where he is described as an ancient deity, also known as the Dark One, or the Void, or the Destroyer of Dreams. Within the Spawn universe, Urien's sole purpose is to eliminate all existence and obliterate the wheel of life and death. This genocidal intention of Urien makes him one of the most apathetic and dreadful beings in the Spawn universe. He can't be destroyed, as established by Kagglostro. Therefore, prior to his encounter with Spawn, Urien was contained by a united front of heaven and hell, and was eventually released by a ritual sacrifice. After being released, he emerged in his true form as the end of everything, in the form of a plumbing, dark cloud of death that engulfed town after town. Immortality is one of the most prominent powers of Urien, alongside the power to manipulate reality and time. He can also absorb souls and manipulate the earth and its elements. He can also project energy on a massive scale and engage in necromancy. During the initial clash between Spawn and Urien easily impels Spawn, and Spawn can only overpower Urien after harnessing the power of Greenworld. Even then, Spawn's power alone was not enough to contain Urien, and it required help from Kagglostro and Angela. As an embodiment of death, Urien challenges Spawn physically, mentally, and spiritually, and continues to corrupt children through his essence even after containment. Malbula, even though not as powerful as Satan or Urien, is the primary antagonist of the Spawn universe, appearing in the first issue of Spawn in 1992. He's the creator of Spawn, who reigns over the 8th circle of hell for approximately 70,000 years, after allegedly overthrowing the predecessor, Leviathan. Even though he was initially depicted as the devil incarnate, it was later revealed that his position was below the true lord of hell, Satan. Malbula was the one who granted Spawn his superhuman powers. Even though he's one of Spawn's sworn enemies, Malbula can wield necroplasmic magic, allowing him to raise the dead, to cast grotesque horrors, thus controlling the Hellspawn armies. He also has telepathic powers and can shapeshift. He can teleport between different realms. However, he's the strongest within his own realm, i.e. the 8th circle. Beyond these superhuman magical powers, Malbula is also a master schemer, which is evident in how he tricked CIA agent Al Simmons into Hellspawn servitude, manipulating his love for Wanda as leverage. He uses his scheming antics to order his lieutenant, Violator, to harass Spawn. He could also track Spawn remotely through his blood pool tracking, which enabled him to manipulate Spawn more easily, even after Spawn decapitated Malbula in the 100th issue and gained control over the 8th Circle of Hell. Malbula continues to wreak havoc through the fragments of his necroplasmic essence, and later returns as Freak and possesses the Violator. Even though not the most powerful, Malbula is undoubtedly the most important antagonist of the Spawn universe, since he's the architect of Spawn's origin story. Mammon, another recurring and intimidating villain of the Spawn universe, was first introduced in issue 87 in 1999 as a suave and persuasive demon. He was introduced as the second major villain of Spawn after Malbula. Just like Malbula, Mammon came to rule the 9th Circle of Hell for over 20,000 years after defeating its former ruler, Thurifer. However, Mammon was not originally a demon of hell. Rather, he was one of the angels of heaven who was banished from heaven after he refused to fight the heavenly war. Mammon is immensely powerful, even though not as powerful as Satan. Within his own realm, he's even more powerful than Malbula. He possesses the power to shapeshift, necromancy, telekinesis, telepathy, and supernatural strength. Mammon is also immortal and a master manipulator with potential multiversal influence. When seated on the throne of creation, Malbula indeed created Spawn. But it wasn't Mammon's long-term planning and manipulation of events that orchestrated Spawn's origin. He manipulated the fate of Al Simmons to ensure that a perfect hell Spawn was bred so that he could control them as his pawn. However, in the 89th issue, Spawn managed to scar Mammon during their battle. Mammon also defeated Malbula to take over his throne, but was ultimately defeated by Spawn and Nyx. According to fans, Mammon is one of Spawn's best villains, who even after being defeated, continued to resurface in the shadows time after time through the fragments of his powers that still persisted. For a cosmic villain, Mammon's greatest power lies in his influence, blurring fate and free will in Spawn's world. Kagglostro/Sin. The biblical reference to this daunting villain of Spawn can be linked to Cain, the first murderer. According to the Spawn universe, Kagglostro was born as Cain, and he was the first Hellspawn to ever be created. He later adopted the alias of Kagglostro, among many others, like Sin, Cog, or the Count. Initially, he was introduced in the 9th issue in 1993 as a mere alley dweller. Later, he was revealed to have deep knowledge about Hell and Spawn's powers. He was not only the first Hellspawn, but was also the first mentor of Spawn, who taught Al Simmons that if he overused necroplasm, it could lead to his eternal damnation. Originally depicted as a friend to Spawn, who has forsaken Malbula long ago, Kagglostro later becomes his foe. One could argue that he is the most cruel of all Spawn's enemies since, unlike others who were upfront about their evil intentions, Kagglostro disguises himself as an ally and betrays Spawn. After Spawn defeats Malbula and abandons the throne of the 8th Circle, Cog seizes control of the throne and unveils his true intentions. He then pretends to help Spawn rebuild Earth, but betrays him to strip him of power and obtain the Box of Eden. After his betrayal resurfaces, he reinvents himself as Sin and absorbs the necroplasm of other Hellspawns like Plague and Omega to become more powerful. He seeks to reign as the cosmic overlord and claim the crown of hell for himself. Like all Hellspawns, Cog is also immortal, has necroplasmic abilities, and has the power to manipulate reality. However, until he reemerges as Sin, his powers rely on a single necroplasm tick. The Violator, also known as the Clown, is a half-demon born to a human mother whom Malbula created to cultivate souls from Earth. He's the eldest of the 5 plebeian brothers and was first introduced in the 2nd issue in May 1992 as an obese and grotesque clown. He was assigned the responsibility of guiding and mentoring the new Hellspawns, including Al Simmons. So in a way, the Violator was the first mentor of Al Simmons as Spawn. The Violator is brutal, resents humans, and firmly believes that the army of hell should be led by demons. His brutal antics are reflected in his methods of tutelage, as well as his subjecting his mentees to physical assaults and taunts so that they waste their powers, and the reliance on hell deepens further. In simpler terms, the Violator is a sadist who finds pleasure in tormenting, or rather, violating others. The physical feats of the Violator know no bounds, and his powers include superhuman strength, regeneration, agility, necroplasmic manipulation, shapeshifting between clown and demon form, flame breath, teleportation, and possession. However, even though he loves tormenting his Hellspawn mentees, he's bound by the rules of hell and hence cannot kill any Hellspawn without orders. The Violator is one of the constant tormentors of Spawn, and it is his tutelage that provokes Spawn to question his own power, humility, and his role. The Redeemer. The Redeemer was created by the Ethereal Masters in the Orbital Angel Station as an answer to the Hellspawn. The Redeemer first appeared in the 16th issue in 1993, but a single being has not just held the title. Rather, multiple mortals have held the title, including Jason Wynn, Phil Temper, and Eddie Frank. The powers of the Redeemer are comparable to those of Hellspawn. They have been empowered by the divine light, and just like Hellspawn, they can fight with supernatural strength, teleport, and manipulate matter and energy, and regenerate. They can also project energy through their heavenly sword, since they're created to counter Hellspawn. They also have the ability to sense the presence of Hellspawn, as to make it easier for them to hunt Hellspawn across realms. The first Redeemer was Jason Wynn, who was chosen because of his involvement with Al Simmons' death, but was eventually defeated, upon which he returned to the Angel Station, where his title and memories were erased. The next in line for the title of Redeemer was Phil Temper, who was purer than Wynn, but he was pulled off from his duties and reassigned to look after off-world matters. The most formidable and powerful Redeemer is Eddie Frank, who was introduced in the 29th issue. Frank became the Redeemer after he killed his abusive father, and even though he initially battled against Spawn, he later joined hands with him and became Al Simmons' ally. The Redeemer is not an antagonist, but rather a counterbalance of divine power to the necroplasmic darkness of hell. Saigore, or Cyber Gorilla, who was once immortal, Michael Kanish, a squad mate and loyal friend to Al Simmons. He was one of the trusted males who intended to expose the truth behind Simmons' death. However, Jason Wynn, under the veil of Project Sim of the U.S. Army, subjected Kanish to an experiment where his mind was forcibly transplanted into the body of a silverback gorilla. The experiment backfired, and instead of the intended 80% human body, a grotesque 80% gorilla-bodied being was created, which came to be known as the monstrous Saigore. Once Saigore breaks free from his captivity, he wreaks havoc on New York City, where he tracks down Spawn. He engages in a ferocious battle with Spawn in New York, but Spawn turns out to be much more powerful than he is, and defeats him by using dark forces like a swarm of bats to suffocate Saigore. After this fierce battle, he is captured by the military, but eventually flees again. The cybernetic enhancement through the experiments granted Saigore various powers, including superhuman agility, senses, strength, and speed, along with the power to heal himself. He can also self-diagnose and self-repair mechanical damage. With his newfound powers, he can also enhance other creatures and turn them into cybernetic beings. However, Saigore is not a constant adversary to Spawn, and at times, he's even Spawn's ally. Chapel. Yet another one who betrayed Spawn during his mortal life is Al Simmons. Chapel is one of the closest friends turned adversaries to Spawn. Chapel, better known as Bruce Stinson, worked with Simmons as his friend and comrade in the CIA and U.S. Special Operations, and later joined the super team, Youngblood. Chapel murdered Al Simmons by torching him to death under the instructions of the corrupt official, Jason Wynn. After Spawn regained his memory to avenge this betrayal, Spawn later carved a skull out of Chapel's face, which left Chapel gnarled and disfigured. In order to replace the missing piece of his face, Chapel grafted a skull onto his bone. Chapel was born in a prison in Illinois without any superpowers, but later was subjected to chemical exposure, which gave him several superhuman abilities. He was also injected with a special type of HIV that can be activated with a special serum, which enhanced Chapel's lethality. Even after being disfigured by Spawn, he didn't simply admit defeat and back away. Instead, he resurfaced in Youngblood and hunted Spawn again in a quest to learn more about the secrets of resurrection. He attempted to follow the path of Spawn and shot himself, but unfortunately, instead of becoming Hellspawn, he transformed into the apocalyptic avatar, Lord Chapel, serving the demonic Calcifer as a horseman of the apocalypse. Overt Kill. Another well-known nemesis of Spawn was born as Nicholas Roca in the streets. Unable to lean on his love for art, history, and literature, he turned to extreme violence, working for the Luciano crime family, where he was treated as nothing more than a mere expendable asset. He initially worked as a mob enforcer, and in a suit to murder a rival's son, he almost killed himself. However, he was resurrected by his mob brother, who pieced Roca together into a completely cybernetic killing machine, renamed as Overt Kill. His mob boss, Tony Twist, brought him to New York in order to kill Spawn, and with his heavily armed structure with lasers, rockets, and machine guns, he was able to fatally wound Spawn. He could not, however, kill Spawn, and was eventually defeated. After his defeat, he joined hands with Jason Wynn, and, under his instructions, pursued Terry Fitzgerald, but he failed the mission as well. Overt Kill went through several revisions and was transformed into Overt War. But one thing that remained consistent through all of it was his fixation on killing Spawn. As a cybernetic being, he possesses superhuman strength and speed, along with lasers shooting from his eyes, rockets, and cannons. As Spawn's first physically dominant adversary, He tested Al's limits and introduced themes of mechanized vengeance. Marvelous verdict. Spawn's enemies are more than just villains. They're reflections of the torment, betrayal, and darkness that define Al Simmons' cursed existence. Be it Satan, Hell himself, or cybernetic wrecking machines, or a friend turned foe. These antagonists of the Spawn universe have shaped the evolution of Spawn, both as a reluctant savior and a warrior. What makes Spawn's rogues gallery so unique isn't just their raw power, but the depth of their motivations and the personal stakes they bring to the fight. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.